All right, we're live. So welcome to day 2 of Looker training. Yesterday, I spent most of the time just talking about Project Phoenix, which is an actual project that we have in our Looker instance. A lot of us developers, few of us on the call, have contributed towards that project. It's an internal project meant for our leadership to manage us as consultants, managing our bookings and our timesheets. Um, and if anyone wants to be a part of that project, just ask. And we're pretty open. We it's a great experience for any of you to learn Looker, also to learn how we're managed as consultants, which I think is very valuable for all of us. If we want to, climb the ladder, understanding how a consulting firm is managed is definitely a very valuable thing to understand. Today, I want to go through the slides for the boot camp. We'll get more in depth with all the different pieces of Looker, especially the LookML, all the different components. We didn't touch on that much yesterday. I wanted to just show you an actual project right off the bat, just to show you guys what Looker can do. And today we'll go more in depth, helping you guys understand the semantic layer of Looker, which is called LookML. Let me share my screen. I do want to call out, I'll send this in the chat right now. At Maven Wave, certifications, badges is extremely important to us. It brings up our company's prestigiousness. The more Looker, badges we have, the more Looker projects we'll win. And it's a great way to learn Looker, to work towards something. So in the link that I just shared, this is the new training environment for Looker, and it's got about 10 different courses and labs that you just go through, and then you get credit after you go through each one. This would be a great opportunity to learn Looker and to essentially get certified. This is all they have with respect to certifications. There's no exams, it's just these labs. So if you take them, you get credit for taking them, and that really helps us as a company win more Looker projects. So if you're really interested in Looker, please take a look at these courses. I'm definitely going to do the same over the next week. I want to get all these credit for all these courses. I'm sure there's going to be a couple things new that I learned. So there that is. And as far as yesterday, we have a lot more people on the call today than we had yesterday. That was my mistake. I created the meeting invites a little bit too early before everybody accepted the meetings. And if you did miss yesterday's session, there is a record of the session that I sent in the Google chat. So please take a look at that if you want to catch up from yesterday. But this is the homepage of Project Phoenix, and what I did was I just kind of walked through the project in all different various ways. It definitely might have been a little bit too much for you beginners in Looker. I'll resort back to this today if something pops up that I want to show you guys. But we have a live actual project in Phoenix. It's very high profile within Maven Wave. You know, a lot of our leadership team is using it with respect to managing, you know, us consultants, making sure that we're booked on projects. But today, you know, as I said before, let me send this link in the chat. This folder, it's called Looker Documentation. It's got a ton of training material. What's very valuable, unfortunately, there's no Looker book that you can purchase on Amazon. Everything's online. You know, Looker's a rather new data visualization software, but we received these bootcamp slides from Looker, and there's 3 of them. There's a Looker Developer Bootcamp, an Advanced Bootcamp, and then a Data Explorer. You know, if you really need to bite down and learn Looker, I really recommend you read through those slides. It's got slide notes in it, and we have the slides. We have them both in slide format and in document format. This will be what I'll be using to guide me through today's lesson. But for you personally, I really recommend you read through these slides. It's got these you know, notes after each slide, and this is really good learning material. So yeah, definitely take advantage of these bootcamp slides provided to us by Looker. And that's what I'm going to be going through today. So we're going to really start from scratch and let you guys get to know LookML. So yeah, for the agenda today and tomorrow, we'll be covering the basics of Looker, starting with an introduction to LookML. Then we'll talk about dimensions and measures and how they're defined. We'll talk about model files. Then we'll get into caching and data groups. And then the big piece, you know, I think my favorite piece about Looker is derived tables. Once you use and understand derived tables, you really understand the value of Looker. That is an awesome addition to Looker. We'll talk about administration and then some best practices. So LookML stands for Looker Modeling Language, and then it's Looker's proprietary language that provides an abstraction layer for SQL databases. So in other words, you know, Looker is a language. It's the semantic language of Looker, similar to how with Power BI, it's DAX, with Tableau, it's Viz SQL, with Looker, it's LookML. All that LookML does, it's an abstraction layer that writes SQL queries on the fly in your database's language. So it will change the way, you know, every database are virtually the same, but you know, they have different nuances, different ways of writing functions. Looker knows all of those nuances, and it will generate the code that's necessary for whatever database you're working with. So the LookML doesn't have to change, but Looker will know what database you're using, and it will change its code for that. All right, this is a good summary of what Looker's all about, high level. First off, Looker is a browser-based software as a service platform, and it connects to any SQL database. That's what you see at the bottom here, all the different connections that Looker can have. If it's a standard SQL database, you know, a relational database, Looker can surely connect to it. And you know, anything that's recent, as I showed yesterday, it's got all the different abilities to connect to any database. And then at the top of the chart, you see all the different ways that Looker can be surfaced. And Looker is a data visualization tool, just like Power BI and Looker and Tableau, but it actually calls itself a data platform. The big reason why it calls itself a data platform is because it doesn't have to be the end piece of the puzzle, across the assembly line of a data and analytics solution. Usually the data visualization tool is, but with the use of REST APIs and the ability to embed visualizations in software, it doesn't have to be the end piece of the puzzle. You can actually connect another tool to Looker uh, and receive its data and its visualizations using the REST API. So the REST API is Python, if you guys know Python, and it can pretty much do anything you can do in the Looker. You can write code for, and you don't have to learn all the code. There's a tool in Looker that for every function that you can think of, it pre-assembles all the Python code for you. So yeah, there's 4 ways in which Looker can be surfaced. The standard way is through the web interface. That's your explorers, your dashboards, and your looks. Scheduled delivery is basically sending out your visualizations via email. Embed is surfacing a visualization in a website, and then the REST API is allowing other platforms to retrieve the information inside Looker. So yeah, step 1 of starting in Looker is connecting to a database. Something I don't like about Looker, but it is what it is. You have to be an admin to connect to a database. We have about 5 or 6 admins currently inside Looker. We're pretty open in giving people admin access, especially temporarily. We certainly want to provide you guys the ability to connect to the data that you need, and we don't want to do it for you. It would be better if you do it for yourself. So if you need to connect to data, just reach out to me. I'll give you the admin access for a day. That will allow you to connect to a database, and then that will let you be off running with your own projects. So let's define some key terms in Looker. So LookML is basically a language for describing dimensions, aggregates, calculations, and data relationships in a SQL database. Excuse me, my dog. Hey. So, this is a good snapshot of what LookML is all about. It defines dimensions that you see up top, measures, and within each field, you can do a lot of cool stuff. As you see at the bottom, there's an HTML link that's determining the color of the value based on its range. Yeah, from everything from, starting with a table inside of a database, Looker will create a view off of that table. It's not creating an actual view, but it calls itself a view. Any mapping to a table is called a view in Looker, and everything from defining all the attributes of the table, and then to defining all the joins that are necessary to make up the underlying data model that you want to use for a dashboard. All of that is stored in LookML. So the lowest level of LookML objects are fields. Um, so when you map to a table in Looker, first thing it does is it creates a dimension for every single field in the table. Whether it be a dimension or a measure, it's still going to create a dimension for every single field in the table. It does it for you. You certainly want to keep all that code. But when it comes to defining actual measures, and a measure is an aggregation function, you will create that off of the dimension that was already created. I'll show you that a little bit later. So as I just said, measures are aggregates. They don't physically live in your database table. They need to be created. Aggregates will, aggregate dimensions together, such as like a sum, a count distinct, and average. They don't appear in your group bys. They depend on dimensions to determine that grouping. So as you see in this SQL statement right here, you got one dimension defined as users.city, and then one measure defined as users.count. And on the fly, Looker will generate SQL in your database. And here's a snapshot of a simple query that LookML has created off your database, defining one dimension and one measure. Views are where we define dimensions and measures. So a table you can think of as just a bundle of related fields. Most of this code is created for you. When it comes to creating a project in Looker, you connect to tables from your database. Once you connect to tables in your database, most of the LookML gets created for you. As I said before, Looker just creates a dimension off of every single field in the table. That's kind of what you see here. So I'll give you an example of what this looks like, but rest assured, a lot of the LookML gets generated for you. Let me show you it right now. So let's go into Looker and go into develop, go into projects. I'll create a new LookML project right now. So you want to, let me zoom in. So I just called it Phoenix delete. Delete is what I always write for anything I want to delete. Your starting point, you have the option to generate the model from a database schema. You can clone it from a Git repository, or you can just set up a blank project. We'll keep the first option open. Then you want to figure out what connection you want to be using. This list is all of the different database connections that we have created inside Looker. We'll go to Phoenix Reporting Dev, and we'll build a view off of just a single table. Let's call it. Pretty sure that's one of the table names. We can ignore these first two. Let's create this project. All right, so here's a new fresh project inside Looker. And I connected to one single table inside of the database. I just wanted to show you, this is the raw LookML that Looker creates for you. What it essentially does is it creates a dimension for every single field in the table. That's what you see here. At the top, you see the exact table name inside the database that it's connecting to. For any date field, it creates a dimension group. It allows you to aggregate by many aspects of a date, from date, week, month, year, quarter. At the very bottom, it always creates a simple count measure, which is just a row count. So yeah, this is just the basics of what Looker creates for you. I definitely recommend you go this route. You know, when you bring in a new table, allow Looker to create the LookML for you, and then you just work off of this LookML. Also, you know, when starting out a new project, you're going to have to configure Git. It's pretty simple. In Maven Wave, we typically use Bitbucket, but I've used GitLab. I use GitHub. Um, I won't show you how to connect to Git right now, but you know, when it comes to mapping Git to Looker, um, a Git project is configured to a Looker project. So every single Looker project has a Git connection. And there are a few different types of views that you can create inside Looker. The first one that I just showed you is a standard view, which is just an abstracting of what's already in a database table. The second one is a virtual table, which is also known as a derived table. We'll cover that later in the training, but a derived table is basically a table built off of a pre-existing table in Looker, and that has tons of value. The third type of table is called a persisted derived table. That is essentially a derived table that gets written back to the underlying database. That's another thing that makes Looker very special. The fact that it's writing to your database, something that other tools can't do. That's very valuable when you got a long query that takes quite a bit to render. You want to speed it up. The quickest way to do that is to write the table to the database so that the visualization isn't rederiving that query on the fly. It's just pulling up a stored table that is already cached, and that makes your dashboards render a lot faster. Now we'll talk about the Explorer. An Explorer is the driver of analysis on the front end. What an Explorer is it includes one or more views which are joined together, which each usually targets a specific business question. So you can think of an Explorer as a predefined set of tables that would frequently need to be joined for business inquiries. I'll show you that later, but why don't I show you it in the Phoenix project. So this is the Phoenix project, which is a already completed project. Here are all the views. We were just talking about views. We have quite a bit of view files in our project, but we only have one model file, and the model file is where all the explorers are created. And you can just think of an explorer as a predefined set of tables. So let's go to what's one that I know very well. So timesheet versus forecast. This is one of the dashboards in Project Phoenix. It has its own explorer. Basically, an explorer is the join logic for all of the tables. When it comes to when I model, I always try to build a star schema data model. A star schema data model usually has a single fact table with a bunch of dimensions attached to it via a left outer join. So basically with the Explorer definition, you start off with a base table. That's your fact table. And then you join in all of the dimension tables. And there's three parameters that you just got to remember when it comes to joining. What type of join, whether it be a left outer, an inner, a full outer. the relationship, whether that be many to one, or many to many, and then the SQL on, which is the exact join parameter. So this is the the join logic for the data model. So anytime you're building a dashboard, this LookML will generate the join logic that will take place in order to bring all the tables together. So it's very similar to an Explorer is a model. Um, a model file is made up of multiple Explorer definitions. So as you see in Project Phoenix, we have a single model file, and then within the model file are all of the various Explorer definitions across the entire project. So we have about 50 different view files, but we only have one model file because all the Explorers can be defined in a single file. At the top, the model file gives you the connection name, and then you also um, need to define the views to bring in. This statement right here just tells Looker to bring in all of the views into this file. That just allows Looker to have access to all of the different view files. So it's important within the model statement you have the connection name and then the views to include. With connection, you see a macro right here, a dynamic piece of logic, which is actually defined in the manifest file. The manifest file is like an overarching project setup file where you include macros such as connection name. Give me one moment. So yeah, this is just a manifest file, pretty simple, but it defines all of the constants across the project. So Project Phoenix has both a dev and a prod environment on this single instance of Looker. And for that reason, as we're, moving information from dev to prod, we want the code for the model and view files to be the exact same across the environments. The only thing that changes are these constants. Depending on what environment it's in, the constant will be different. So that's just a great way to, don't repeat yourself. We're not, changing code. The code is the exact same across the environments. So the highest level of a LookML object is known as the LookML project. We just created a LookML project that test one. And a project is essentially a library of code that typically maps one-to-one to a data source or database connection. You can think of each project as an almost independent mini instance or microcosm of Looker. So that the Looker projects don't really talk to each other unless you use the project import to bring a project into another project. We won't really talk about that, but you can think of each project as a mini microcosm of a Looker. They don't really talk to each other. All right, this is a very important slide just to really understand the overarching theme of Looker. It shows the hierarchy of the LookML objects. So in the center we see a view file. That's the lowest level. Within the view file, there's dimensions and measures defined. So after the views come the explorers. The explorers are the data model definitions that bring all the views together. The model file is very similar to an Explorer, but that's where all of the Explorer definitions are stored. And then you got the overarching project, which holds all of everything underneath. And at the project level is where Git repositories are stored. So everything related to a project within this hierarchy is stored in Git. Um, I already showed you how to create a new project. We'll skip that. When it comes to a project, there's typically 3 types of files. There can be more, but there's 3 that you really need to understand. There's model files, there's view files. Something we haven't talked about yet are dashboard files. A dashboard file, which in Project Phoenix, you see under the dashboards tab. These are all dashboard files. When it comes, you start off creating what is known as a user-defined dashboard. And then in order to move it from dev to prod, you certainly don't want to recreate the entire dashboard. So you convert the dashboard into LookML, into a LookML dashboard. That's what you see right here. And in the code is a long piece of code. I don't think anyone in the company understands the nuts and bolts of this code. You don't really need to. This is really just defining all of the aspects of a dashboard in code. But the good thing about this code is that when you need to move it from dev to prod, it can happen pretty seamlessly, and it can all be backed up via Git just by turning it into a LookML dashboard and then moving the LookML dashboard code across the environments. I showed you this earlier, but here's all of the components when it comes to creating a new LookML project, giving it a project name, the starting point, the connection, telling you, where you want to build views from. And then you don't really need to worry about 5 and 6. Those rarely get used. So let's talk about the Looker dev environment. This is really cool about Looker. It really makes it, this comes from the software engineering space, but right now in the Looker project, I am currently in development mode. When you go into development mode in Git, it creates your own special branch in Looker, and this branch is something only you can see. So while you're developing, you can rest assured knowing that nothing you're doing is going to be shown in prod until you convert it to production. And when I say dev and prod, I'm not talking about the Phoenix dev project and the Phoenix prod project. I'm saying just within any project in general, you go into develop mode to develop a project. And so right now I'm in development mode, and in order to bring something out of development mode and into production mode, it's just a matter of surfacing all of the code changes in Git, and it's basically just following this button right here. You start off with validating, then you commit, and then you push to prod, and then you can go off development mode. When you go off development mode, now you're seeing the production version of the project. This would be what our end users would be seeing on the final. So it's important to note within any given day, as you're developing, you want to make sure you push all your changes to production, so that your work is surfaced uh, to the final version. So we were just talking about this, but yeah, production mode is the production version of Looker. So everyone using a Looker instance in production mode is going to be accessing the same LookML, the same dashboards. So everyone's going to be seeing the same thing. But as a developer, you develop in develop mode, and this creates an own separate branch for you in Git, allowing you to be in your own world, creating, developing, doing things that only you can see. So you can make mistakes, you can do whatever you want. Rest assured, nobody's going to be seeing what you're doing until you push it to production. So I talked about this before, but yeah, development mode allows developers to make and test LookML changes without affecting other users. And toggling, between dev mode, as I showed you, wherever you're at in Looker, you can just click on the hamburger, and at the bottom, there's a toggle to take you in and out of development mode. There's a shortcut key, Control Shift D, will also toggle you in and out of development mode. Okay, these next few slides are just going to talk about what you see on the right hand pane of Looker. Let me show you that. So in the right over here, the first pane is um, the main pane that you'll be using, which um, is the file browser. Shows you all of the different files in the project. This is where you're going to be mostly. The object browser is a great way for searching. So any element inside the project, you can just search for it, and it will give you all of the times that it shows up. So I just typed in timesheet. That's a very common word in this project, and it's showing you all of the different objects and files where timesheet is used. So object browser is a very great way to figure out where in the code to look if you're new to a project. Just to find out where things are using the object browser. It's basically like the search tool. This is find and replace, just in case you need to make a code change all over the place. This is similar to a Control H, just if you need to replace a word with another word. This fourth tab is very important. This is the Git Actions tab. This is where Git is controlled. You have the option of changing your branch inside of this part right here. You can always just create a new branch if you're working on some small piece of code that is different than what if you're doing development in multiple different areas, you might want to create different branches for each one, just because one might get pushed to prod before the other. So that's very common. In default, it just creates your own personal branch, and that's what is showing up right now. For the most part, you typically just want to stay in your own personal branch. And it gives you a bunch of different options for Git. A very important one is deploying to production. Sometimes this button right here doesn't take you all the way to deployment. Usually it does. Sometimes it doesn't. Like in this dev project, when we deploy to prod, we got to go into the Git actions and deploy to production. Reverting, sometimes, you make changes that you just like, oh, I want to start over. I didn't do it right. You can always revert to production and kind of negate all your code just by hitting the revert to. So yeah, this is how Git is managed. What's this last one? This one is overall project settings, telling you what branch is the master branch for Git. That's important. Yeah, here, just basic, all of the project level, settings are shown right here. So yeah, you might be new to version control and Git. I certainly was before I started using Looker 2 years ago. Git is very common across the cloud tools. If you've worked in BigQuery or other various projects at Maven Wave, you've probably been using Git. Git was not invented by Looker. It was comes from software engineers, and it's just a version control system for multiple programmers to collaborate on the same library of code. I think that's the key thing, that what makes Git really special is it allows multiple people to work inside Looker and develop all seamlessly. That tends to be a nightmare, in the other tools like Power BI and Tableau. But, with Project Phoenix, we had like 7 Looker developers working in Looker at the same time. And there's really nothing you need to worry about. You all can work seamlessly inside of your own development mode branch, and you push things to prod. Sometimes there are issues where like 2 people might change the same line of code, and it both gets pushed to production. That will cause a breakage in Looker, but it's easy to fix. It just shows you exactly where the mishap took place, and you just got to delete some code. I guess that's the only thing that might take place, in the collaboration space with Looker. Sometimes 2 people might do the same thing, cause a change on the same line of code. That's the only time that there's going to be a disruption within, the Git aspect of Looker. Yeah, you can think of the overall LookML project and Git repository as a tree, and the main production code would be the trunk of the tree, and then each developer just branches off the trunk to make new features, such as fields and explorers. So that's a good way to think of Git. The main branch is the trunk of the tree, and then each developer goes off on their own, creates a branch, and then moves it back to the trunk of the tree, when the code is accepted. There's tons of different Git repositories. Bitbucket, I think, is most commonly used across Maven Wave. The most popular is GitHub. Also, GitLab is very common. There's tons of different Git repositories. I think they all do virtually the same thing. It doesn't matter which one you use. Looker knows it's a Git repository and will work with it. When it comes to Git, in the top right corner of Looker is the Git button, and the flow of Git is, first you save your work, then you validate your work, then you commit it, then you merge and deploy. It all takes place in this button right here. Um, when you're moving your work from to production, you basically just need to follow along with this button. Click it 4 times until you get to the end. You'll know you're at the end. That'll be after you deploy to production. So yeah, just understand this get button to the right as I go into development mode. So here it is to the right. This is really how Git is controlled. So validate. So validating is very cool. It scans the entire project, makes sure all the code syntax is correct. If there is an issue in place, whether it be an error or a warning, Looker will point it out to you, and it'll point out exactly where the issue exists. So right now it's doing its thing, doing the validating, taking a while. This is a rather large project. Once it's done, it'll ask you to commit, and then it will ask you to deploy. This is taking a while. We won't wait for it. So these slides are just walking you through the Git workflow, starting with validate, then you commit changes and push. That's when you give it just a message. Basically, you just write out what you did in the code change, exactly what you did. It doesn't have to be long, anything too descriptive, but you just put something in there, and then you merge and deploy to prod. As a developer, while you're working in your own branch, if let's say one of your teammates pushed to production, you're going to probably want to pull from production since some new features just went in production. You want to bring all that new stuff into your own branch. So whenever that happens, whenever there's new code in the main branch, this pull from production button will show up, and we always recommend you do that so that you're working off the latest code. All right, let's talk about how Looker writes SQL. So we've talked about how Looker abstracts SQL so that Looker can understand how your underlying database is structured and how it can generate meaningful SQL queries for it. How does the SQL query generate this work? So dimensions and measures are the columns that would follow the word select at the start of the query. Dimensions always get grouped, and then measures are always aggregate functions such as count, sum, and average. That's just a general theme of business intelligence. When I think of a table, the table can either be a fact table or a dimension table. It's usually one or the other. Inside of a single table, there are usually dimensions and measures. Dimensions are usually text fields or dates. That's the stuff that gets what's it called? Gets grouped. Those are the fields that are part of the group by, and then the measures are the aggregate functions. Based on the aggregate, the count, the average, the sum, all the stuff that you need to first aggregate, then calculate. Those are called measures. let me show you that. And we only have 5 more minutes. So here's one of the explorers that's a part of Project Phoenix. I just want to show you guys how it all works. So to the right, this is the data model. This is all defined in a single Explorer definition. This single employee dashboard, this is the fact table. And as you can see, these are all the dimensions inside the fact table in black. And then at the bottom in orange are all of the measures that are defined within this fact table. So let me bring in a single dimension and then a single measure. So in putting in a single dimension and a single measure, what Looker does is it aggregates on the single dimension. So it takes only the unique values of week start date, even though in the underlying data there are duplicates of a single week. It only selects the unique values, and then across those unique values, it calculates the billable timesheet hours. Let's go over to the SQL. You know, as I said before, all LookML does is just generate SQL on the fly in your given database's language. So look what you see right here. You see your single dimension, which is the week, and that's the first field, and that's what's getting grouped by. So every dimension gets grouped by, and then every measure, this is the single measure, billable timesheet hours. This is not a part of the group by, it's only grouped by one. This is what's being aggregated. So dimensions get grouped by, and then measures don't get grouped by, they get aggregated. You know, after you build you know, when it comes to building a dashboard, it starts off with the Explorer, what you see right here. You start off by, okay, let's build the underlying table for the visualization that I want to create. In this case, I want to create a time series of billable timesheet hours by week. And that's what I have right here. I selected week and I selected billable timesheet hours. Let's change the row limit to 5,000 so that we're not cutting off any data. Really make sure of this row limit. It unfortunately only goes up to 5,000. Sometimes you actually wish it went up further, but you know, make sure that you're not cutting off data that's necessary. You know, just kind of scanning through this chart. This tells a good story about Maven Wave. What we're looking at is billable timesheet hours by time. You know, Maven Wave started in about 2011, so that was the inception of this data. I think we've been using OpenAir ever since Maven Wave existed, and I mean, just look at the exponential growth of our company over time. I mean, we've certainly have grown quite a lot in our existence, and we'll probably be growing even more in the near future because we really work for a great company, and we're really getting popular. So yeah, this is a single visualization tile, and this is like the kitchen of Looker. Next step would be to take this visualization and move it to a dashboard. You either have the option of saving it to a dashboard, or you can actually just save it as an individual look. A look is basically just a saved off version of a tile. Let me give this a name. And this is saved in my personal folder. So if I save it, I don't typically use looks much. You know, looks certainly can be very valuable in the scenario where you want to use the same tile across multiple dashboards. you have the option of have it all be connected to the same underlying look. I typically don't use that. I usually skip looks and just take things straight to dashboards. But if I show you what that look that I just saved off looks like, if I go into my folder, it's broken down into dashboards, and then at the bottom are the looks and so I have a ton of looks. Here's the look that I just created, Phoenix Delete. It's a saved off version of the visualization. So that's pretty cool. So it's 9 o'clock. We're out of time. I hope you guys learned some things about the basics of Looker. We really just touched about the nuts and bolts of LookML, the dimensions, the measures, the Explorer, the model file, the project, Git. Those are all the real basics of LookML. Tomorrow we'll just continue along and take it further. Really excited to talk about drive tables. When I learned about drive tables, I was like, wow, this is a game changer. This is really going to make Looker very powerful. And I hope you guys see that too once I show you it. Well, thank you all for attending today's meeting. Yes, Aditi?
Hello, Danny. I just had a quick question. Yesterday, you shared us a URL for activating our Looker account. So I did that this morning, but I was not able to view the existing dashboard. So is it restricted to a number of people, like the admins?
Oh, it's a good question. If I'm assuming you're talking about Phoenix. You weren't able to see Phoenix. I would have to um, add you to the Phoenix group, and I can certainly do that for you, and I will. Anyone who
Okay.
wants to see the Phoenix work, just ping me. I don't want to give it to everybody. I'd probably get in trouble for that. But if you ask for it, I'll certainly let you see the Phoenix stuff. There's not any proprietary information inside of the Phoenix project. It's basically just showing all your booking and your timesheet hours. I certainly don't think that's personal information. So yeah, I'll send it to you.
Okay, I just wanted to explore, so I asked.
Of course.
Thank you.
Yeah. So for anyone who wants to see Phoenix, just ping me and I'll get you access to it. But I will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you for attending today's session, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you, Danny. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.